Welcome to the source. It shouldn't help maybe we're having a Hanukkah special. Listen, you think I'm dressed like Santa Claus. I'm Hanukkah Harry behind me. That's a Hanukkah bush. I apologize for the sexist messaging on my hat. It's my yarmulke. All right, folks, there's no way I can keep up that Tevye accent for the whole show. Do not worry. But it's going to be a costume-themed show. For some reason, I just feel like expressing myself through props and theatrical things. Maybe it's because I never had the chance to take drama in high school, so I acted out, and I have very little supervision, of course, on my show. We've got some super clips today. My favorite one, when for the first time in my life, I tried to use a power tool, namely a chainsaw. Obviously, I had no clue how to start such a tool, and my intern had to. He handed it to me. You can see I had a little bit of trouble, but in the end, we got that tree cut down. If you don't know what I'm talking about, that's ahead. When I was a kid, as you can imagine, I got beat up a lot. I mean, I don't know why. And so I had to learn Kung Fu to defend myself. I mean, I remember in school, the other kids were so mean, a little bit anti-Semitic, and the teacher would come and sort of goad the other kids on when they beat me up. The fact that I was homeschooled made it all the more bitter. So I had to learn Kung Fu to defend myself. And I'll show you a little Kung Fu action that I did later in the show. And finally, I'm just going to put that down there. And finally, I'm going to show you when I dressed up as a postman. I've never been in uniform before, except for when I was in Boy Scouts. And just walking through the streets as a postman made me feel so impressive and so authoritative. I got a lot of ladies looking at me because a man in uniform, just so. Folks, that's our monologue mashup. And it's the first part of our Christmas celebration special, The Best of the Source. Folks, take it away. The monologue mashup is next.
Submitted for your consideration. Picture a man in a happier time, secure in the knowledge that he's in the nexus of personal and business communication. Letters, packages, checks, all flow through him and him alone. A postie, living a carefree life in a world without fax machines, internet, and private couriers. Suddenly realizing he's been returned to sender. Address unknown. You've entered the postal zone.
No, it's not a cop outfit. No, I'm not a male stripper. No, this is not the village. It's a post. What we're on? Oh, excuse me. Oh, hello and welcome to the Source. I love the dramatic arts. Did you see my cinema verite? That's going to win a Gemini. Me as my angst-ridden mailman yearning for a simpler time, a time before the interwebs, or whatever the kids call it these days. P.S. I've been told that I now qualify for a government grant for performance art. I have also been told that being called a third-rate thespian is a compliment, not a homophobic insult as I thought it was. Anyways, I'm so excited about today because tonight at 1 minute before midnight, Canada's postal workers have announced they will strike. Sock it to the man. That's right, solidarity forever. You've probably heard the unofficial motto of mailmen everywhere: neither snow, nor rain, nor heat, nor gloom of night stays these couriers from the swift completion of their appointed rounds. It's just so hard to say that without laughing, isn't it? You'll notice that motto doesn't mention huge government union paychecks and pension benefits and gold-plated contracts that you and I in the private sector could only dream about. Because if those perks aren't in the contract, my boys ain't going to deliver the mail, nuh-uh. And that, my friends, is why we're going to have a strike tonight. Right now, it's just a one-day strike, but it could go on. Last night, the boss of Canada Post, a CEO with the soothing name Deepak Chopra, met with the boss of the mailmen's union called CUPW, but they didn't come to a deal. So now we're in a game of chicken. Who will blink first? I hope no one does. You know, way back in the day, like in the 1980s, Canada's mailmen had us by the bills. Every day they touched our bills. They were the only ones allowed to touch our bills, to hold our bills, to fondle our bills. Sometimes they even sneaked a look at our bills. Seriously, they were paid to touch strangers' bills. But not today. No longer do we Canadians have to let a government union touch our bills. We can handle our own bills from the privacy of our own home on our computer. You can even do it from your own bedroom, which is the proper place to handle your own bills. There's a whole new generations of Canadians growing up who have never had a government worker touch their bills. Well, except when going through airport security, I guess. Every day, thousands of senior citizens discover the thrill of pointing and clicking their own bills. All right, enough stupid jokes about bills, but seriously, over the last 5 years, the amount of mail that's handled by Canada Post has plunged 17%, even though Canada's population is booming. It's all going to email and online and texting and Facebook, and call it snail mail. It's not even an insult anymore. It's just a fact. Sort of like talking about candle makers in the age of the light bulb. Mail, snail mail is sort of cute. A tourist curiosity, maybe, like a horse and carriage in a city. Seriously, if you're like me, you think an old rotary phone is antique, let alone snail mail. Let's make the leap into the future with the postal union strike to help us get going. Let's all use the looming strike as an opportunity to switch the last of our mail to something online. When private companies strike, consumers use the chance to try something else. When a sports league strikes, fans find other games to watch. And when the strike is over, they have to truly earn those old fans back. I don't think Canada Post has a lot of fans to begin with. Let them strike, and let 1,000 private companies, from private couriers to online companies, fill the void. Let's take away Canada Post's monopoly on letter mail, too, while we're at it. Other than the government union, would anyone in Canada actually be worse off? So to my fellow mailmen, I say, to the barricades! On the Isle of Wight, what I'm about to do to this piece of wood would be considered a racist act. Yeah! Take that! Oh yeah, we're putting the Jew back into judo today on the Sun News Network, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sorry you have to see a little bit of fur on the brisket here. What's going on? I mean, besides my desire to display my considerable physical prowess on national TV, I actually have a pink belt in Taekwondo, you know. Anyways, although I committed assault on a tree on Friday, today was not a sequel to my Earth Day Chainsaw Massacre. This is about a man named Simon Ledger. He's a bar singer on the Isle of Wight in the United Kingdom. One of his most popular tunes to play is the 1974 disco hit Kung Fu Fighting. He's played it hundreds of times. But on Sunday afternoon, when he was playing the song at the Driftwood Beach Bar on the boardwalk, a Chinese person walked by the bar and heard the song. Now, he didn't like it. Fair enough. I mean, it's an inherently offensive song. I mean, people, it was disco. Disco. Disco can be very offensive, especially when sung in an irritating British accent. But instead of just chuckling and moving on, this passerby called the police. Seriously, he called the cops. And instead of the police warning this complainer against making prank calls to 911, the police actually arrested Simon Ledger, the musician. Now, according to the Bobbies, he's being investigated for suspicion of, quote, causing harassment, alarm, or distress under Section 4A of the Public Order Act of 1986. Seriously, because he sang a disco song about kung fu fighting. Should we really call the cops to be the arbiter of musical taste? Of course not. Like with all things we don't like to hear or see, the instinct should not be to censor and run to the government. This passerby, not even a customer at the bar, doesn't have a right not to be offended, even if the song was offensive. He's got the right not to listen, the right not to go into the bar, the right to go into the bar and complain until he's thrown out. He's got the right to tell his friends about how mad he is. He's got the right to pen a letter to the editor, to call on parents to protect their kids from such filth as kung fu fighting. And that's it. There's no counterfeit right not to be confronted with disco. It's not a real right. On national TV, I shall now commit the most heinous crime imaginable to earth worshippers. They're pretty soft on real crimes, you know, against people. But Saint Suzuki himself has called for politicians to be jailed for not believing in his theory of man-made global warming. Well, Suzuki's going to give me the death penalty for this. I shall now commit first-degree lumberjacking on this poor tree. Happy Earth Day, Sam. Fire up the chainsaw. Hey folks, a lot of people want to see me covering up my face, not just the rest of my body. Well, you're in luck, folks, because after the break, I'm going to wear a space burqa. That's next on The Source. Hey, welcome back to The Source. You know, I love the space program as any, I guess, guy who was born after 1960 does. I mean, it's sort of a symbol of the strength of the West and the high hopes, but at the end of the day, it really is a big government program, and I think the private industry could probably do better for cheaper, and now they're going to have to, since Barack Obama has canceled space flights, but kept NASA around for PR reasons. Well, that, of course, was a good excuse for me to wear a space burqa. Check out this. I'm just practicing wearing my space burqa. Kidding around. Hey, folks, welcome back to The Source. You know, what? Is there something unusual going on? This is Hard News Straight Talk, people. We're talking about NASA. Joining me today live from Ottawa is John Robson. John, how you doing?
Привет, товарищ.
Ah, как дела? We're speaking a little Russian. That's actually what this whole shtick is about. John, can you believe it that NASA, which was part of the giant space race against the Soviets, the race against the Reds, now NASA is requiring American astronauts to study Russian?
Yeah, I'm reminded of a line from A Funny Thing Happened on the way to the forum. There's no way to make it sound like an accomplishment. You know, you could make all kinds of excuses. Well, it's practical, it's safety. But no matter what you say, English was the language of space. And now the fact is the Americans are out of that rocket go whoosh into the out of the atmosphere business, and they have to learn Russian in order to talk to the people on whom they now depend for their ride.
Now, who made this decision? I mean, it used to be that, like you say, English was the language of space, and anyone other than the Russians who went into space had to learn English. If you were an Indian astronaut, an Israeli astronaut, a French astronaut, you're speaking English. Why the change? Give me the political decision.
Well, you know what they say, that success is 1,000 fathers and failure is an orphan. But really, you have to say it's Barack Obama, because he canceled the successor program to the shuttle. And this is a logical consequence of doing that. And you figure, if you were going up in a Soyuz rocket, you'd want to be able to read the controls and know what the guys were saying. If an emergency arose, yeah, you'd want to be able to communicate with the guy who's driving. So you could see where the practical desirability arises once you've made this decision that we will no longer be able to put men in space. There's, it seems to me, the decision on which all of this hinges.
You know, it's incredible. I mean, the international language of aviation is English. If you're landing in Timbuktu, if you're landing in China, they all speak English. And this is an incredible, it's not just, I don't even think it's necessary, by the way. I don't think that American astronauts really do need to learn Russian to hitch a ride with the Russians. I think it's the Russians just turning the screws and saying, ha, we hold all the cards now since you, Barack Obama, canceled your space shuttle, and we're the only game in town. We're going to make you speak Russian just to make you dance. What do you think of that, John?
Well, I noticed that they raised the ticket price as well, which suggests that they figure they've got the whip hand. On the other hand, because I know that some Russian agency said, oh, well, now we're in the Soyuz era of space travel, the age of reliability. And I thought to myself, if I was on the deep space successor to Aeroflot, I think I really would want to be able to read the emergency instructions. But you know, it's just, you could always rationalize these things. No, the empire's not in decline. It's just a temporary measure. It's fine. We'll get by. It's just being practical here. But enough of these things add up, and it's clear that you've lost your will to be number one. Now, I'm not writing off America yet, but I'm saying letting this kind of thing happen and not being bothered by it.
Yeah.
If too much of that accumulates, you simply slide into mediocrity with a whole pile of rationalizations in tow.
You know, in Mark Stein's new book, After America, he says that he doubts that the United States could even put a man on the moon today, even if they tried. They just lack the industrial and political and decision-making will. Now it's all studies and impact studies and environmental studies and lawyers. Just the greatest moment of American achievement was probably 40 years ago. And I'm worried that that's becoming a prophecy that Obama is fulfilling.
Yeah, I mean, and with the greatest respect to Mark Stein, I think sometimes he does get just a tad gloomy. You know, remember that the Americans did put pieces of metal from the World Trade Center on Mars, which I said, I'd like to see the jihadis do that. But the problem is a slow kind of accumulated decline. Remember, for a very long time, if Rome wanted to rouse itself, it could do almost anything. But it increasingly lost the will to rouse itself, and the rot got worse and worse, it got harder and harder. And so the thing to me, if the Americans for some reason had to get a man on the moon, they realized it left an important piece of luggage there and they needed it back, I think they could get someone there in a remarkably short time. The problem is this gradual erosion of the will to do so. And, you know, I'm encouraged by some signs in American politics and American culture. You don't write the United States off too early. But you do have to stop electing people like Barack Obama and thinking he's cool if you want to reverse the apparent decline.
John Robson, I'm very depressed by it. I mean, you know, it used to be a time when, you know, Canadian and American kids would grow up saying, when I grow up, I want to be an astronaut. It's sort of weird. It's not a great American dream anymore. It's a great Russian dream, great Chinese dream. And if you're American, well, you know, maybe the Soviets or the Russians will let you hitch a ride. I appreciate you talking, my friend. And
okay,
thanks
and
for being.
I appreciate you taking the helmet off, because remember, in space, no one can hear you rant.
That's right. You know, this is our going to be for sure our nomination for a Gemini for Hard News Straight Talk, my friend. Thanks for joining us today. Let me put my hat back on.
You don't need me over there.
Hey, folks, after the break, I don't wear a costume, but I go out of my studio into the deepest, darkest, filthiest, Occupy Toronto shantytown, Obamaville. Wish me luck. That's next on The Source. Hey, welcome back to the show. You know, last month when it started getting cold, I wondered just how many of these Occupy Toronto people were sleeping in the tents in downtown Toronto. I mean, it's not fun camping out in the winter, and I had my suspicions. We got ourselves an infrared camera and went down there to check it out. Look what we found. Hey, welcome back. We're having our own little Occupy shantytown here. Here's my sign: peace, freedom, and love. I actually believe in these things. I don't think they believe in freedom down there. They're more for these tyrants, Mao, Marx, and Che Guevara. Let me just show you some of the beautiful stuff in the tent that our intern, Rebecca, did. She's reading a copy of Noam Chomsky, of course. I take myself very seriously. I love CBC, QP. There's me. You remember I won a second place Douchebag of the Year award. There's their shrine to me, Palestinian flag, who are the 1%. Chaz is using his BlackBerry, which is very Occupy. They hate corporations, except for Apple for their iPhone and BlackBerry for their little BlackBerry. Anyways, I'm happy that I've got my glasses. You know, when they stole my glasses from me last night, it reminded me of when I was in school as a kid, and everyone used to beat up on me, and the teacher didn't care, but enough about my homeschooling experience. David, isn't there something funny about the arguments they put to me? They said, get out of this park. Yep. But they don't want anyone to tell them to get out. They said the tent's private property, but they don't believe in private property. They're incoherent. They're just bullies.
These guys are trying to suck and blow at the same time, Ezra. I mean, you notice that if we don't leave, they're going to call the police. Wait a minute. I thought you're anarchists. I thought you don't like law enforcement.
I thought they hate police. They call them names. They call them pigs, and the police aren't enforcing any laws. So maybe they would want the cops to enforce that one law.
Yeah. Indeed. And the other point of the hypocrisy is that an empty tent in a public park, well, I mean, it's almost like beachcombing rules. You know, it's there. You could take it if you want. Yet your eyeglasses on your person, your personal property, this guy commits borderline assault to snap it off your face.
Well, it is assault. When you touch someone, even lightly, that is the technical definition of assault and battery. Now, Joe, I mean, right now, this case in Toronto, it's in the hands of a judge who's weighing, well, the charter rights, but only people have charter rights. An empty tent doesn't have a charter right. What do you think the cops should do? We've got the proof. Roll the tape, Ricky, while we're talking here. These are the shots that you and Matt Wolf took last night showing that 90% of the tents were empty. We showed you what the warm tents looked like. You can see the orange spot. These are the cold, empty tents, the ones that I knocked on. There is no one in there. Joe, shouldn't the cops just move in and clear out the empty tents and let the judge talk about charter rights for people, but tents don't have charter rights.
Absolutely. If it's not the police, then the city workers should go in if they care at all about the park. Get the tents out of there, throw them in the garbage. There's no one in them in the first place. And as you say, they don't have rights, the tents. So, you know what, don't wait for the court to decide on Monday. Take back that part of the park.
Yeah.
As for the people that are protesting, you have to wait for the court, but the rest of it you don't.
You know what, I think this whole thing is like a puffer fish. You know what I'm talking about, those little fish that they puff up to be a lot more big and intimidating than they are. I mean, they are intimidating in a way. Like, they'll push you around and steal a guy's glasses, and, you know, as we know, there's been 110 assaults and rapes across North America. But they're actually not the 99% they claim they are. I mean, look at these, empty tent after empty tent after empty tent. These were your shots that you took last night, Joe, of stone cold empty tents. There is nobody. They are the 1%, not even 1%.
Right.
If it was 1%, there'd be 50,000 people down there in Toronto.
You know what, there's absolutely no question about it, and the whole thing is nothing but a charade. I like your puffish analogy, and here's what has to happen. The police and the city have to do its job. They're paid a lot of money by the taxpayers to go in and deal with it. We've given them the evidence. But the good news for you, Ezra, no more second place. After this, you're moving up to #1, baby.
I think so. You know what, let me say one more thing. You know this thing called Anonymous? That's these hackers that threaten people. Anonymous tweeted last night that they were going to come and get me because I dared to expose the reality of this. I mean, that says everything to me. If they're a criminal group, I mean, they're breaking the law, they're committing crimes and misdemeanors, yet if I talk about it, they're going to come and threaten me. What do you think of that, David?
You know, to dial back to what you said originally, Ezra, when this began during the warmer weather in October, there was like that Summer of Love San Francisco vibe. Now we're at the Altamont Rolling Stones concert where the Hells Angels bodyguards started killing people, or at least one person. You know, the Summer of Love, you know, this tent city Summer of Love is clearly over. There's bitter, rotten people there, and I think they're cruising for a bruising. They want a confrontation, and they're going to get one. Just a matter of when.
Well, you're so right. I mean, I was looking in empty tents. We were very quiet, and when we used just the infrared camera, they didn't know we were there because the infrared camera works on heat, not light. Yeah. But when we decided for me to go into the empty tents, we turned on our spotlight, and I spoke up loud enough, and that's what got these 5 or 6 guys coming. So if we had had a chance to go through them all, we would have showed there was dozens of empty tents.
Correct.
But then they started pushing and shoving. They broke one of our guys' flashes on his still camera. So they were pushing. They grabbed the glasses. I think if we didn't have that video camera there, they probably would have tried to punch me a bit. I mean, they were agitated. Some of them were high. They've been bored. They've been looking for a confrontation. I'm already the #2 douche in their mind. I think they were looking for a little bit of blood if we hadn't left when we did.
Well, we could go back now. I love the way you're dressed, and you know.
I'd take my glasses off, and I think they'd probably land a punch or two.
Listen, these guys are smart, and they also
are they smart, or are they being puppets used by smart people?
Well, all of the above. I think that they got in your face as far as you can go, but they also know that if they wanted to turn it on to you, the police have walked away from that park. They quit. They won't go in there. No-go zone. Yeah. Nowhere else in the city is that allowed. Yeah. Somehow the police are on the perimeter. So,
well, and that's the thing. But across the street, kitty corner, in a parking lot, was a police car with 2 cops sitting all night, not doing a thing. And that cop car has been there for weeks. I walk by it all the time. They're getting paid overtime. We were there at 4 a.m. because we're foolish guys looking for a little trouble. The cops are there. I don't know what they're making at that hour of the night. We know that Vancouver spent $500,000 in police overtime in 1 week. I can imagine Toronto's probably near the $2, $3, $4 million mark, and it's all because they won't enforce the law. Last word to you, David Menzies. To me, it's important that we're all treated the same before the law. Right wing, left wing, whatever our religion, whatever our race, if there's a rule involving the park, everyone abides by it, and there's no special favors or dispensations. Why are these guys getting a special dispensation to be trespassing hooligans?
Because we have the top cops in this city, starting at Bill Blair, who are not so much into law enforcement. They're into politics, Ezra. Little wonder why Bill Blair's Empire Club dinner has been canceled, because they only sold less than 50 tickets.
Well, it's not just Bill Blair. It's cops and mayors across the country. Bill Blair would do, Police Chief Blair would do what the mayor asked him to. It's the same in every town across this country. Calgary are cowards. Vancouver are cowards. They are all cowards, David.
But you know, I'm occupying the Hockey Hall of Fame. I'm on break right now. The cops there have been absolutely terrific to me.
Because you're not smoking pot and assaulting girls.
No, but
not yet.
they are, there was one cop that wanted to have me arrested for my tent outside the Hockey Hall of Fame, and he said to the sergeant, we have to do this because otherwise he's going to set a precedent. Other people will be doing it. And the sergeant said, do you read the newspaper?
Yeah.
Do you know what's happening just west of here?
That's right.
Here? And, so Ezra, I talked to these guys, off the record. They're itching.
The cops, you mean?
Yeah, but they're handcuffed. The cops are handcuffed from carrying out the law. It's a disgrace.
Unbelievable. David Menzies, Joe Warmington, thanks for being there. And David, thanks for protecting me and getting my hotchkies back when the Marxists took
Just remember me at Christmas.
I will. I'm what's known as a never nude. I am never nude, even in the shower. But after the break, I take it off for you, my TV viewer. It's what I do for the craft we call journalism. That's next on The Source. Welcome back to the show. Let's be honest. I'm husky. I'm plus-sized. I'm big-boned. I'm bosomy. I'm buxom. I'm ample-breasted. And that's why my contract with Quebecor says I'm not allowed to wear spandex. But they didn't say anything about going barefoot all over, did they? In this next segment, I take it all off. Now, I got to tell you, there's a little bit of fur on the brisket, so if you're easily offended, turn away. But if you're into JILFs, J-I-L-F, you know what I'm talking about. You won't want to miss a minute. Well, I talk now to someone who is not afraid to show the world her natural glory, the God's given gifts to her. She's a very blessed girl in that department. Joining me now from our Ottawa studios is Michelle Sparrow. And my wife has told me that I must have my eyes closed for this part of the show. Michelle, thanks for coming on the show today.
You're welcome.
Now, I got a question for you. Why do you like to go outside naked?
Well, I don't go outside naked. There's laws against that, but I do go outside topless. I suppose I go outside topless because it's hot out.
That's a pretty good reason, but now you had a very special protest the other day in front of the Ottawa Sun. Now you're taking on the company I love and work for, but I think you probably got everyone's attention at the Ottawa Sun by showing up topless outside the Ottawa Sun. What did they do so wrong to get you to come out topless outside the Ottawa Sun?
Well, there was actually 2 incidents that grinded my gears, so to speak. Back in the Sunday, July 17th issue of The Sun, they had an issue about the anniversary of women being allowed to go topless, and they censored it. And I was a little disappointed that in an article about how we have the law on our side, that they still would censor the breast.
But Michelle, let me ask you a question. I mean, I understand the difference between having the right to do something and choosing to do something. I mean, we all have the right to go topless, which, by the way, is a right I never exercise. I'm one of the people called a never nude. I'm never naked, even in the shower. I shower with my eyes closed. So I have the right to be naked. I choose never to do so. Mm-hmm. The Ottawa Sun had the right to show you topless, but shouldn't they have the right to choose not to show you topless? Isn't that them exercising their freedom just the same way you choose to do so in a different way?
I agree completely, and they have every right to censor nipples if that's their stance, but they don't have the right to discriminate between male and female nipples.
I know. Why don't they have the right to discriminate between male and female nipples? I mean, I understand that you could say there's a double standard, and they would say, yeah, there's a double standard. We just think our readers are more comfy seeing men's nipples than women's nipples. I like saying the word nipples so much on the news show, by the way, Michelle. I mean, why shouldn't they have the ability to choose to show men's nipples but not women's?
Well, the law says that men and women are equal, and we like to think that men and women are equal. And quite frankly, in this wonderful country, I believed that women and men were equal, but when it comes to this sort of thing, it's clear that we aren't. And I just want to know where the line is. What makes a nipple inappropriate? Like, what about women who have had their breasts removed, or women with very small breasts, or men with very large breasts, or young infants, male infants who lactate, or women who no longer lactate? What about if it's covered by fabric, but the fabric's see-through? When does a nipple become obscene? Nipples and navels, we've all got them, you know?
I actually have 3, which is one of the reasons why I never disrobe, although I am getting a little bit hot in this conversation. I might just take my jacket off if that's okay. It's just getting a little bit hot here. But, you know, I got another question for you, though, seriously. I mean, I think that at the end of the day, we should be free. You know, it's a little bit hot. I might just take these, do my sleeves here. If you're going to be a nude protester or a topless protester, I sort of get that. But I got a question for you. Don't you think it's more important, could be perhaps more effective, for you to protest outside, say, the Saudi embassy, a place where, you know, women don't have the right even to go without a burqa?
Well, that's true, but this is our North American version of the burqa. Women aren't allowed to take their shirts off, even if the law says we are. This society, it doesn't permit it. Women feel terrified, I mean, either of shame from their family or from rapists or whatever there might be lurking in the dark. And I just want to normalize this so women don't have to be afraid.
I get the idea of normalizing being naked. I get it. But I guess what I'm asking you is, we're so far ahead of the Saudis in terms of women's equality and the right to be naked. Don't you think that instead of fighting for that last percentage of freedom here in Canada, the freedom to go topless, shouldn't you and, frankly, other feminists go to Saudi Arabia and say, hey, let's start with the basics there. Let women show their whole face instead of wearing the burqa. Let women drive cars. I guess what I'm saying to you is what you're doing could be called a feminist act. And by the way, I sort of support you. I mean, there is a certain freedom. There's a certain freedom to having the wind caress your body so gently, to feel a gentle breeze, a warm Chinook wind dance on your body. I mean, you feel free. You really feel free. You're saying
especially
society,
on a 40-degree day.
You know, society's not the boss of me. All these, you know, you're born naked. You leave the world naked. Why should we put on all these layers? They're just barriers between us. I mean, really, clothing is just a barrier between us. I totally get it. I'm getting it. So, you know, I'm getting sort of excited about what you're saying. But don't you think we should focus on countries where you're not even allowed to show your face before we go after that extra inch of flesh here in Canada?
I suppose so, but I mean,
What
help
are you
things
gonna
at
do about
home before you go ahead and tell other people how to conduct their business.
Well, no, I think we should care about
can we honestly say, hey, you Saudis, stop putting women down when we're still putting women down at home?
What? Come on, Michelle, look, I want to challenge you. Me and my friends Peter and Lloyd want to challenge you. You live in Ottawa. I want to challenge you to go to the Saudi embassy. That is, I'm not telling you to go to Saudi Arabia. They'd cut your head off for going out topless. I want you to go to the Saudi embassy on Sussex Drive, stand outside there, and maybe wear a burqa, and then rip it off. And I want you to show that you are free, not just here, but that you're calling for freedom for women in Saudi Arabia. Will you do that? Will you stand up for women in other parts of the country, other parts of the world, who can't even go out with their faces uncovered? Will you do that, Michelle? If you don't, I think you're being a little too precious and focusing on the easy stuff. It's easy to be a topless feminist in Canada. It's tough to stand up for women's rights in Saudi. Will you do that?
I don't have a burqa, but I could certainly parade around topless in front of the Saudi embassy.
I think that would be a great moment. I can send you a burqa.
But
I'll send you a burqa. I want you to go out front of the Saudi embassy, and I want you to pull it off and show those Saudi bastards inside that here in Canada we've got the freedom for women to drive, to vote, and hell yeah, even go topless. And let me say, it's a really liberating feeling. Michelle Sparrow, you've helped me unlock an inner Ezra that a lot of people never wanted to see, hope they never see again, and actually can never unsee once they've seen. I appreciate you being here. I feel light. I feel free as a bird. You've helped me do that. Talk to you soon. I'm going to go have a nice glass of wine, put on the hot tub, and we'll see you later, folks. Don't you go away. After the break, I'll put my clothes on, maybe. Let me say this, you can turn the channel, you can turn off your TV, you can cancel your cable package, but you cannot unsee my chest. Folks, stick around after the break. I'm going to reinvent myself as the CBC's most irritating comedian. That's next on The Source. Hey, welcome back to the show. You know, Mary Walsh is a hardcore leftist activist. Seriously, that's what she does most of the time these days. But every once in a while, the CBC pays her big bucks to be a comedian and go around and do her leftist activism in a costume where she pretends to be Marge Delahunty, warrior princess. It's really not that funny, but they add on a thick layer of laugh tracks to make it seem funny. I later found out through an access to information request from the CBC that they actually direct a show called This Hour Has 22 Minutes to go on the attack against the CBC's enemies. Well, one of those enemies was Mayor Rob Ford, a conservative mayor who got elected in Toronto, and the CBC hated that. Well, Marge Delahunty, the character played by Mary Walsh, went right onto Rob Ford's private property and harassed him. And the CBC had a big laugh about that. Well, here's my take on Mary Walsh and Marge Delahunty. Here's me dressing up as her, dressing up as him, or something like that. Check it out.
Hi, it's me, Marge Delahunty. From this 22 minutes feels like an hour. I'm here at Toronto City Hall. That's the mayor's inner sanctum. I understand he's talking about busting the labor unions to pick up our garbage. I'm gonna go in there now. If I don't make it out alive, well, long may your big jib draw. Let's go.
Yeah, no, we gotta figure out a way to head off this garbage strike. No, the city can't afford another garbage strike.
He's talking about the garbage strike.
No, it can't happen. We gotta figure out a way to get these unions. No.
Mayor Ford! Mayor Ford! Mayor Ford! Marge Delahunty, from this 22 minutes feels like an hour. Are you doing some more union busting? Oh, you're talking about garbage strikes, are you now, boy? Well, every time you leave the office, you take out the garbage. Got 'em! I'm Marge Delahunty. From this 22 minutes feels like an hour, and I've sneaked into City Hall to find Mayor Rob Ford. Follow me. I think he's inside here, boy. Mayor Rob Ford, Mayor Rob Ford, where are you? Oh, smells like conservative policy making in here. Mayor Ford, it's Marge Delahunty. What are you doing? Oh, Lord Levant, Jesus, Mary, Joseph, and the Seven. Oh, what's that? What's that? Is that your Tory policy platform? Got him! Mayor, Marge Delahunty. Hey, you stay where you two. We'll come to where you're at. Mayor, Mayor, Mayor. Why do you keep running from me, Mayor? Marge Delahunty. From this 22 minutes feels like an hour. Got him! I'm Marge Delahunty. From this 22 minutes feels like an hour. And I'm actually in Rob Ford's home. The chicken coop. That's his bedroom in there. Let's go catch him unawares. Oh, Lord Thunder, he's like a beached whale, isn't he? Where's Mrs. Ford? There's trouble in the house, isn't there? Mayor Ford! Mayor Ford! It's Marge Delahunty! Mayor Ford! Mayor Ford! I gotta give you a big smooch, Mayor Ford! Oh, Mayor Ford! My eyes are up here, Mayor Ford! Look up here, that's my eyes! Got him!
Folks, I gotta tell you, that was the first time in my life I'd ever worn lipstick, and I just felt like kissing everything in sight. I felt sort of beautiful in a Mary Walsh kind of way. I mean, don't tell me about my body image. You've all seen it. Folks, after the break, I'll give you Hanukkah Harry's season's greetings, and I'll say goodbye. Don't go away. I've got a few more words left after the break. Welcome back to the show. I sure had fun looking at those old shows. We did so many costume shticks, and sometimes people ask me, why do you get silly sometimes? Well, the first thing is it's fun and it's entertaining, and I don't think news and news commentary has to be boring. I mean, you flip on the CBC at any given moment, you're likely to find a documentary on cheese making in northern Saskatchewan, a 4-part mini-series on that fascinating story, emphasizing the minorities who are making up that multicultural mosaic. I mean, boring. The thing about the CBC, though, is they can be boring because they're going to get their $1.1 billion a year subsidy and bailout no matter what. I think news can be fun and funny, and there's so much to mock. There's so much mockable about so many people involved. I mean, my favorite example was going down to Occupy Toronto and just seeing how empty those tents were. I mean, we had a good laugh about it and how they were stumbling around there trying to explain how I couldn't be in the park, but it was public property and they could be there. It's just, I mean, sometimes laughs are the best way of mocking folks, but you know what? I think at the end of the day, we are allowed to take risks on the Sun News Network. We're allowed to be a little bit politically incorrect. I mean, I called that spacesuit a space burqa. I've worn the burqa on the show before. I've shown the Danish cartoons of Mohammed. Those aren't funny things. Those are serious things that we need to talk about in this country, but too many of the other stations, especially the government broadcaster, are just too timid. They won't even talk about spicy issues for fear of offending someone. They won't challenge conventional wisdom because, frankly, they are conventional wisdom. I don't even call it the mainstream media or the liberal media, although they are. I call them the consensus media. Whether you're talking about the role of women in Islam or global warming or St. David Suzuki, they all have the same point of view. What I try and do on The Source, and I think what we do on all the shows on the Sun News Network is, well, maybe be a counterweight, an antidote to the consensus media, the official point of view. I don't expect you're going to agree with me on everything. I don't know any person, including my wife, who agrees with me on everything. That's not the point. The point is, can we have a vigorous discussion? And frankly, can I laugh at myself? Because I know if I don't do it, there's a lot of people lined up. That's actually my favorite part of the show. Not just dressing up in funny things, which is a hoot, and wearing lipstick. I swear I don't wear lipstick except for on the show. But reading what I call lovingly my hate mail. Because I want to show that I've got a bit of a thick skin myself when people poke fun, and I also want to show the kind of response I'm getting from people who are so used to being spoon-fed the consensus media point of view. I love showing their rage, their personal insults, and frankly, their absence of a reasoned argument. I desperately look through my email for a substantive criticism from the left every day. Only rarely do I find it. Folks, it's almost the end of the year. What a great year. The Sun News Network moving from just a twinkle of the eye of Pierre Paladot, a man that many English Canadians have never heard of before, to being the most vigorous, interesting, fun and funny news network in Canada. We've shaken up the news media, not just on TV, but in print also. We're certainly leading the charge on discussions that are very important, discussions that have never been had in this country before. I look forward to 2012, which is going to be an amazing year for news and entertainment, and the show The Source, which blends the two. I'm Ezra Levant, dressing up like Hanukkah Harry, wishing you a Merry Christmas, a Happy New Year, and a Happy Hanukkah. Bye-bye, everybody.